back to World Crisis Radio. Let's look at some elements of economic program as they emerge now. I would just wrap up on Glenn Ford and the Black Agenda report. Obama has methodically empowered the right wing of the Democratic Party. These are the famous blue dog reactionary Democrats as arbiters of federal legislation. Obama has been an active player in this debacle. Obama has methodically empowered the right wing of the Democratic Party to be the arbiters. And with health care, he's essentially turning everything over to the private insurance companies. And he's allowing the Republicans and right-wing Democrats to kill the card check provision. Obama refuses to use the persuasive, arm-twisting, and bully pulpit powers of the presidency to get any of these measures through. He didn't lift a finger for the cram down, didn't lift a finger for the card check. For the F-22, though, there he came out to shut down those assembly lines. The presidential pattern, writes Glenn Ford, is unmistakable. In fact, it has become Obama's governing signature. He eviscerates, he guts the labor and progressive agenda by withholding crucial White House support for measures that he nominally endorses, and then passes the leadership back to the most backward elements of the Democratic Party. The conclusion is inescapable. Barack Obama is the most active and critical member of the right wing of the Democratic Party. With Obama at the helm, card check never had a chance. Absolutely correct. I also recommend another article, which is too long for me to go into right now, by Bruce Dixon, also at the Black Agenda report. This is an analysis of the Obama health care strategy. Maybe we'll get to that next week, but it's excellent analysis, probably the best analysis you can find on quite a few websites. In terms of my program for California, I recommended the institution of a 10% California usury law. And I'm interested to see here in the Washington Post, Thursday, July 23rd, we've got agitation for a federal usury law. Bank branches are being picketed in several cities by the Metro Industrial Areas Foundation. Well, gold is where you find it. The Interfaith Network and Action in Montgomery, probably here in Maryland, they've been picketing Wells Fargo, Citibank, Bank of America, Capital One, Discover, and J.P. Morgan Chase. And the demand is to ratchet down these 20 to 30% interest rates that have been outrageously imposed on credit cards. It turns out that Bernie Sanders of Vermont, Social Democrat, had tried to get a 15% cap on interest rates. In effect, a usury law at 15%. My proposal, 10%, but he tried 15%. He got 33 votes in the Senate. There is a cap of 36% on payday loans after it was found that they were preying on soldiers, sailors, Pentagon employees. Anyway, there's action on the usury law front. And, of course, this goes back to the catastrophic Volcker era, Volcker now being promoted back into the White House by Obama. Now, we're watching this California situation. California descending into barbarism. We've seen all these cuts: education, higher education, college grants, state parks, health, welfare, prisons, police, fire, and so forth. Everything tried, except, of course, the Republicans say no new taxes. That's their mantra, even as the state descends into barbarism. Well, I have a new tax that you should try. It's called the Tobin tax, the securities transfer tax. And here's how it would work. It's very hard to get a good estimate of the total financial turnover in the United States. If you go on the Internet, you can find somebody did an analysis back in the year 2000 and found that the financial turnover was $500 trillion in 2000, not counting over-the-counter derivatives, the kind that are just done, counterparty to counterparty, not exchange-traded, but the over-the-counter stuff. So if it was $500 trillion almost 10 years ago, minus the over-the-counter derivatives, we're certainly safe in giving a lowball estimate of today, a ballpark lowball figure, that we've got 1 quadrillion of yearly financial turnover. That's really, I think, a small estimate, but let's just work with it. Since California is about 12% or 1/8 of the entire U.S. economy, it means that California's share, if it were simply done per capita, of the 1 quadrillion of financial turnover would be 120 trillion approximately. That means that if you were imposing a 1% Tobin tax on California, you'd be getting 1.2 trillion. Now, you might say, well, this is skewed because so much of that turnover goes through New York and above all through Chicago, where you've got the options and futures, at least the biggest market. So that's fine. Let's allow for that. Let's cut it in half. Let's say that instead of having a $120 trillion share of the 1 quadrillion of U.S. yearly financial turnover, that California only gets a $60 trillion share. That would then leave, with a 1% Tobin tax, 0.6 trillion, meaning 600 billion of Tobin tax revenue for California. So I think we're certainly safe in saying that a 1% California Tobin tax on derivatives, stocks, bonds, futures, options, commodities, foreign exchange, you name it, rights, real estate paper, this would give, at the very least, several $100 billion of revenue for the state of California, meaning that you could obviously deal with the $25 billion budget gap right now. You could roll back the unwise and destructive, pathological, sociopathic cuts that have been made in recent years under the liberal Republican Schwarzenegger, the tool of Warren Buffett and George Shultz. You could then also think about rolling back, ratcheting down the most odious of taxes, which is the regressive sales tax. Now, as of April, here's the picture on the sales tax in California. The minimum statewide sales tax, 8.25%. But there are other areas, parts of California, it gets up to 10.25% sales tax on the clothing and shoes and school supplies that everybody's going to be buying in the next month so their children can go back to school, and related points. In much of the San Francisco Bay Area, Los Angeles, it's 9.75%. 9.75%. So at 10% tax on shoes, clothing, consumer electronics, all sorts of purchases, cars, of course, all that covered. Why not say to the bankers, come on, let's talk equality of sacrifice. You guys want to talk shared sacrifice. We're all in this together, Wall Street and Main Street, community of interest. That's a lot of baloney. But if you want to turn that stuff back on them, say, dear bankers, how come you guys can't pay a 1% Tobin tax, meaning a sales tax, on those speculative trades that you do all day long, derivatives, stocks, bonds, futures, options, foreign exchange, commodities, and so forth? Why can't you pay 1%? And the answer is, of course, they should pay 1%. We're looking for a clever, ambitious politician, some Democrat most likely in the state of California, who would like to be governor and whose ambitions might go on beyond that, might even reach to the presidency, because if you can become governor of California and solve these problems, you would automatically be a contender for the presidency. You could begin to organize the Democratic Party in 2011 into 2012. The ticket to do that is the Tobin tax, the securities transfer tax, a 1% tax on all that, paid by the broker, paid by the larger of the institutional partners. Jim Wright, Speaker of the House from Texas, brought it up in 1987, then came under attack. But the idea was correct. Back in a minute.